is CNN Breaking News.
This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. It's just a little past 11 here on the East Coast, and we're live with new developments tonight. Victory for President Trump. He is hailing the passage of a massive $1.5 trillion tax cut, which fulfills a cornerstone campaign promise, and he celebrated with congressional Republicans at the White House, insisting that major changes in the tax code will stimulate the economy and create jobs. They, in turn, effusively praised Mr. Trump for his leadership on this legislation, but the president and the GOP now need to convince skeptical Americans that the bill is right for them. Also, it's Christmas time, and President Trump insists Americans are saying Merry Christmas again. But did we ever stop? His predecessor never did. By the way, Merry Christmas, everyone. Let's talk about the tax cut bill now. I want to bring in CNN political commentator Margaret Hoover, a former White House staff member for President George W. Bush. Also with me, CNN political analyst John Avlon, editor-in-chief of the Daily Beast, author of Washington's Farewell. Do you guys know each other?
We're acquainted and have children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually,
and
that
you are
book,
married.
The book you just showed was dedicated to me and our children. There's the disclosure, America.
You guys look like a friggin' Christmas tree.
That was unintentional.
That was,
I feel weird about
clearly
it.
we didn't
Thanks,
plan
man.
this.
Who am I to talk with this turtleneck?
An awesome turtleneck.
Thank you very much. It was your advice. You made me wear it. So this was really this significant victory. It was a legislative victory for the president today in the Republican Party. Not one Republican, Margaret, voted against the president. Even his harshest critics were with him on this. Do you think it's going to create momentum for the GOP?
Well, look, the way this tax bill is structured is that to the extent that Americans do see money in their pockets because of this tax bill, that will be in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, rather than over the course of 10 years. Many of those sort of gains that people get in their pocket are designed to hit up front. So they'll be diminished out over the next 10 years, but that's right in time for the 2018 election cycle. So this is a political win, explicitly, not a policy win for movement conservatives, for Republicans. It's none of the things that Republicans have been saying for decades we want in a real tax overhaul came to fruition here, but it's a political win, no doubt.
And the president certainly needed it, and also Republicans needed it because they go home with basically no legislative achievements. Major legislative achievements.
Well, and now they have it, and they have it also in the form of, the Obamacare mandate repeal, so they can say they did the best they could on health care, they did the best they could on tax reform, and then they'll say they had some regulatory reforms.
John,
so they actually have something to run.
I know, clearly not. It's sort of like,
let me give you an in here because the problem is the voters don't like the bill. Okay.
Right.
Here's what the poll shows. 33% of Americans support it, 55% oppose. Our poll also shows 56% of voters want a Democrat for Congress. Only 38% prefer a Republican. I mean, that was interesting to me. Does a win like this recalibrate the Trump presidency, you think? And what do these numbers say to you?
It gives Trump a win, which he desperately needed. He said we'd be tired of winning. There hadn't been much winning on Capitol Hill for Republicans right now, but now they can say they passed a major tax cut. Good for them. Here's the problem. What they sold it as was a middle-class tax cut. This ain't that. They sold it as tax simplification. This is not that. What it is a big corporate tax cut, which doubles down on the president's reputation for business. It also is a massive just busts open the deficit and the debt. So all those fiscal hawks who said this was a core issue for them, they gave up the ghost. They waved the white flag. Yeah. So look, I think it's a political.
I just find it very cute that, I mean, you're not a Democrat, you're an independent, but I find it very cute that all the Democrats from the left are attacking this from the deficit busting argument when they're during the Obama presidency supported legislation after legislation that added $1 trillion to
Paul Ryan did concede today that he did not know if the cuts would pay for themselves, and that's what sold it.
I don't like that either. I am a deficit hawk. That's why I didn't like this bill.
But look, Republicans got to confront the fact that it's self-evidently obvious at this point that they only really care about deficit and the debt when a Democrat's in the White House. That's a problem of principle.
But the last time that the budget was balanced was with what?
Clinton,
a Democrat.
Yeah.
And a Republican as the House of Representatives.
And then my thing is, listen, the trickle-down economics, has it ever worked?
It has.
Well,
look, Reagan cutting the top rate from 72 stimulated the economy.
But that's because
true.
marginal tax rates were 70% at the time. You take it from 70% down to 40%, you're going to get a growth in the economy. But when you take it,
you're going to get like a senior fellowship at the Brookings Institution pretty soon.
Stop it, Joe.
No, but the point is it did work under Reagan, that cut in the top rate. But this is basically trickled down for a corporate rate. And they didn't bother to close any of the loopholes because it was too difficult for the lobbyists. And that's why you're going to have a massive growth in the deficit. This may be good short-term politics. It's lousy policy.
Okay, listen, there was a ton of praise poured on the president today at this ceremony.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just watch this.
You're one heck of a leader.
Could not have been done without exquisite presidential leadership.
And we're going to make this the greatest presidency that we've seen, not only in generations, but maybe ever.
Thank you, President Trump, for allowing us to have you as our president and to make America great again.
President Donald Trump delivered a great victory for the American people.
I mean, come on. This sort of like dear leader genuflection in the cabinet meeting.
Come on,
in the
Margaret.
cabinet meeting, Washington Post calculated that Vice President Pence praised him once every 12 seconds for 3 minutes. That's not normal human behavior, folks. That's a hostage video. I mean, what's going on, people?
Come on, conservative Margaret Hoover.
No, look, this is sad. This is really, really
It's
sad.
embarrassing, isn't it?
It's really sad. And it's there was a time where conservatives like me who really supported people like Paul Ryan and the center right and believed that they were they were supporting President Trump in order to deliver on their principles, right? And so in order to get the kind of tax reform done that we'd talked about for 30 years, they had to cooperate with the Republican president in order to be, so it was actually harder for them to be with Trump in order to deliver, and then they didn't, right? So this just undermines the fact that they've totally sold out their principles.
But why would they do that? Why would?
Because it's all gone.
And why wouldn't he say, like, stop it? Like, stop. When people do that, don't you say, "Oh, come on, stop it"? Like, this was a team effort, and it took all of us. We all got it done.
This
it was
president
great.
demands something very different from the people who work with him.
And it's just creepy to see senior senators like Orrin Hatch give the president a tongue bath on national television.
A tongue
it's
bath?
odd. It's just weird.
I don't even know what that is. I don't even know what that is.
It's like what cats do.
Did you just say that?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
That just happened.
President Trump also reignited we'll move on, his war on Christmas today.
And we can say Merry Christmas again. People are saying Merry Christmas again, and we like the sound.
I mean, it's war on Christmas rhetoric, not his war on Christmas.
Correct.
So let's remember, President Trump isn't the only president who says Merry Christmas. President Obama and the First Lady Michelle Obama said it many, many times.
Merry Christmas! Happy holidays! Merry Christmas, everybody! Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas, everybody! I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and I want to wish all of you a very, very Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody! Merry Christmas, everybody! Happy holidays!
Okay, so Margaret, I mean, this is a line that we have heard from Donald Trump many. Why does he continue? This is a dog whistle to the base because no one has ever stopped saying Merry Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, except for that if you turn on some of our competitive cable networks, they have entire hours and programming about the war on Christmas. And it is intended directly to go towards that cultural base that feels that other people are taking their America away from them. That was the dog whistle, Make America Great Again. Great from what, right? The people who are taking Christmas away from you, the people who are taking your policies away from you, the people who are taking, all of your teddy bears away from you, whatever it is, right? We're going to make it great. We're going to bring Christmas back. And that's, it's disingenuous. It's not true. But there is a kernel of truth. But you have to understand, like, there is
There's not much that's
fact-based
on the cultural.
To the
Lately,
cultural
these days,
resentment.
it used to be.
No,
It used to be.
but the politics of cultural resentment is all about narrative, right? And when confronted with facts, it falls apart, but it's because things feel emotionally true, whether they're literally true. The problem is that's a bad basis for policy, and it's a lousy basis for trying to unite the nation.
Yeah. And you two looking like I said, all
Merry
We're just trying to
Christmas.
unite the nation here.
Merry
Christmas. Merry Christmas.
And happy holidays, too.
President Trump was so merry that when he thanked Congressman Steve Scalise, he made light of the fact that Scalise was shot and almost killed by a gunman at the congressional baseball game. Watch this.
Steve Scalise, he's braver than all of us. He's braver. Where is he? Oh, boy, I don't know. He had a rougher year than most of us, but it's a hell of a way to lose weight, Steve. You said you lost it.
I kind of like that. Honestly, I mean, that is actually just a good sense of humor. It's a little weird and outside the box, but I dig it. I think that was funny, and I think Scalise took it in the spirit it was meant.
I mean, this is a congressman who almost lost his life in a shooting in Capitol. I mean,
God bless him and everything. But I mean, not taking anything away from it. It's towel snapping. It's Donald Trump's version of charm. Maybe not for everybody.
Here's what I'm going to say to you. I understand what you're saying because we have like humor like that between us. We're friends off camera.
Yeah.
That's something you say to me when we're having dinner or hanging. But if we were in front of cameras, I wouldn't say if you just got shot. Hell of a way to lose weight. I would say that to you privately.
Yeah.
Right. And joking around with you, like, but not in front of everyone.
President Trump's got no filter, Don. I mean, breaking news, right?
Duh. Really?
Exactly. So, better or worse. I think they're examples of no filter that are more damaging to the Republic than that comment.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Don.
Happy Kwanzaa.
That too. Absolutely, man.
The
whole deal.
Feliz Navidad. Thank you, guys. Just ahead, feeling extra stressed because of the state of our national politics? You're not alone. We're going to talk about that. That's next. Donald Trump promised to shake up America if elected president. Now that he is in office for nearly 1 year, most would agree that he has. Many like what he's doing, but others find it too disruptive. I want to talk about that now with Bryant Welch, a clinical psychologist, and Laura Brown, the director of the Graduate School of Political Management at George Washington University and the author of Jockeying for the American Presidency. Good evening to both of you. Thank you for coming on. Bryant, I'm going to start with you. Listen, I don't think that we have ever witnessed such animosity and passion for any other president than Donald Trump. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think last election day, the American people got a very startling view of what's happened to the American mind over the last 2 or 3 decades. For those of us who have been following it, I don't think it was quite as big a shock. But this country has been plagued by terrible paranoia. We've always been vulnerable to paranoia, but with 9/11, we never really addressed that from the psychological fallout of it. And then, in addition, at the same time, our whole national sense of sexuality, gender identity has been has been quite ugly. And we have also been plagued by this runaway greed and envy. And you put those 3 things inside the human mind, and the mind doesn't function so well. Yeah. So all of a sudden, people were hit with the fact that we had a president who was playing to our paranoia, exploiting misogyny, in fact, won because of misogyny, and was the personification of greed and envy. Yeah. So it was quite a shock to the mind, and people
to the psyche,
very,
right?
Very,
to the system, as they say. I want to bring
the whole nervous system.
I want to bring Dr. Brown in. Laura, it seems like every day there is a new crisis. All the turmoil in the country may be extremely stressful here, but is it jolting some Americans from their political complacency, you think?
Well, I think it's a really interesting time. I think it is true that Americans are on edge and they are watching politics very closely. I think obviously all of the media have seen this in their numbers of viewers and readers. They've kind of gone off the charts. But I look at this, and what I believe is that Americans are watching politics kind of the way that many of us tuned in to the car chase with the white Ford Bronco with O.J. Simpson on it going on the freeway. We were looking and watching, but we were very fearful about what the end would be, and most of us knew it wouldn't end well.
Yeah. Every time there's an announcement or something is coming up, people will either stop me in public or they'll text me or email me or call me and say, I don't like Mark Warner today, they were saying, oh my gosh, I can't take much more of this. What's going to happen? People tell me all the time that they are exhausted, Bryant, that it's overwhelming, both the pace of the news and the president's constant tweets and responses. Is there a risk that we become numb and don't pay close attention to what's happening?
Well, that has been the risk. I don't know if I've been down so long it's starting to seem like up, but I'm seeing some very hopeful signs in terms of American psychological resurrection. I think people, if you look at what happened in Alabama, not just the result, but you look at the intensity and focus of those people who worked on that race in Alabama. And once the mind begins to focus in a vibrant and live way, that is self-healing, and it's a wonderful antidote to paranoia. That's why the mindfulness craze has had such a following in this country. If you look at what happened just a few weeks ago in terms of our sexual ugliness, the inability to appreciate the difference between masculinity and femininity, that was a huge upheaval. And if we can, and Donald Trump has called that to our attention in a major way. the same thing with greed. You know, we're all looking at this tax bill, but my God, it's the tax bill reminds me of Sanjay Gupta last week, showing that the president drinks 12 Diet Cokes, has multiple Big Macs, supplements it with fried chicken, and then multiple shakes. You know, we've got this greed and piggishness that is now on display. Yeah. And we can turn those things around. And I think so, in a funny sort of way, Donald Trump may be calling attention to the ugly side of ourselves that if we confront, we can change it.
Yeah.
So I think in the last month we've had the human American mind has had probably its best month in several years.
Well, that's a lot of food, a lot of Big Macs and whatever. If he ate that much, I'm sure he would just, roll on out of the White House. Laura, many Americans, especially women, can't get past what we all heard the president say on tape about grabbing women's genitals. But President Trump was elected anyway, and now we're seeing this incredible wave of sexual harassment allegations, prominent men losing their positions because of it. Do you think that is a permanent change, a clear line between what's acceptable and what's not?
Well, I do think it's a permanent change, but let me say it's not one that's happened just overnight. I think this is a culmination of these types of sort of situations and allegations really for the last 25 years in many ways, beginning with Anita Hill. And I think what you saw was that over time and in many different cases, it appeared as though the men who were responsible for these alleged acts were essentially exonerated and given a pass in our public life. And so I see the situation with President Trump as being kind of the last straw, and really it was Harvey Weinstein's case that pushed it over the edge and changed the conversation. But this is where I would also argue that Donald Trump to me is much more the omega of this conversation rather than the alpha. In other words, we have been really talking about this kind of paranoia not just since 9/11, but going back to Watergate and going back to the disillusionment around the Vietnam War, the revelations of sort of long-held secrets in the Pentagon Papers about Vietnam. The country, in so many ways, I think, is sort of adjudicating the 70s much more so than they are the 21st century.
Well, it's interesting to watch, and I have to tell you, it's much more interesting having a front row to it as well. I wonder what, in 10 years, if I make it that long. I look back at what I'm going to say. At least I survived this. Thank you, Dr. Welch. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Merry Christmas to both of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
When we come back, Republican Senator Tim Scott, who helped write the tax bill, forced to defend himself today because of a tweet. We'll see what was said. Congressional Republicans joining President Trump at the White House today to celebrate passage of a sweeping tax bill. The president saying it's always a lot of fun when you win. Here discussing it, political commentator Angela Rye and syndicated talk radio host John Fredericks. Hello to both of you. Angela, so let's take a look at the victory lap today with the passage of the tax bill. No doubt that it's a major moment for the president and for the GOP, right?
It's definitely the biggest moment they've had, I think, unfortunately, for the American people and all the empty promises that Donald Trump gave during his campaign. It's just frankly more of the same. Donald Trump said that he wouldn't benefit from this tax bill. We know that there's a real estate loophole that he will directly benefit from. You think about the 83% of the tax benefits in this bill going to the top 1% of income earners in this country. You think about the 86% or the 86 million families who will be impacted adversely by this tax bill. It's not a tax reform that we should be celebrating if it's a tax increase for 86 million American families.
It is a win for them, right?
No, it's a win for them, but I think that wins should be celebrated when they benefit the American people writ large, and that's not what we have here.
So, John, let's take a closer look at this group, because there's noticeably one person of color in this picture, one black person in this picture, and it's Senator Tim Scott. Do you think this would have been better if the GOP had the group had been a little bit more diversity? That was a criticism, and then Tim Scott responded to it. Now, we'll talk about that later.
Well, I think, look, the Republicans need to elect more people in diversity in their party across all offices across America. There's no question about that. But let's get to this tax cut. This is a tremendous win for the American people. The only loser in this tax cut is the Democratic National Committee, who went crazy. They spent weeks lying to the American people about what this tax cut is. They got the legacy media like the New York Times and the Washington Post behind them. Now what's happened is you've got the biggest middle-class tax cut in the history of the Republic that went down today. Over 85% of every American is going to see a benefit from this tax cut starting in February when they get more money in their check.
John,
an average family
I don't know if the facts bear that out.
$80,000 is going to save $2,000.
I let you go on because I let Angela go on in the beginning.
Because
but let's
Angela's
get back
not telling the truth.
Okay,
You've got to tell the truth about this tax cut.
But
that's not what we're talking about.
We
were talking about diversity and Senator Tim Scott. Angela, Senator Tim Scott, who is the only black Republican in the Senate, played an integral part in the writing of this bill and getting it passed. He deserves to be standing front and center. However, he got into a Twitter spat with a blogger who tweeted this. He said, "What a shocker. There's one black person there." And sure enough, they have him standing right next to the mic like a manipulated prop. Way to go, Senator Tim Scott. Hashtag Trump, hashtag tax scam bill. Senator Scott fired back. He said, "Oh, probably because I helped write the bill for the past year, have multiple provisions included, got multiple senators on board over the last week, and have worked on tax reform my entire time in Congress. But if you'd rather just see my skin color, please feel free." What's your reaction, Angela?
I think he raised some fair points. If he worked on the bill, he should be standing there. I think that doesn't negate the reality not only of this particular photo opportunity, it doesn't negate the reality of the very abysmal diversity record of Trump's cabinet, of Trump's White House, or of his judicial picks and nominations. So the reality of it is this is an individual who has struggled with diversity, recognizing it, appointing it, and hiring it throughout the duration of his career, way before politics were even in play.
Yeah. John, the president has talked about moving on an infrastructure next. However, Paul Ryan and many Republicans would love to reform Medicare and Social Security. The president has promised several times that he wouldn't touch entitlements. What happens if he breaks his campaign promise?
Well, if Paul Ryan does the most moronic move in political history and defies this president's campaign promise of not touching entitlements and not throwing grandma off the cliff, then the guy should be voted out as speaker and the president should veto the bill. This president campaigned vigorously on protecting the entitlement package for Americans for this time. And he said, I'm going to make the country so rich and so prosperous by tax cuts and other things that we're going to be able to pay for this. So to come out of the tax cut and then be talking about entitlement reform and cuts in Medicaid and Social Security is about the stupidest, most asinine thing in politics that I have ever heard. Look, Paul Ryan had a shot in 2012, and he got his clock cleaned by Joe Biden and Barack Obama. So I don't really care what he has to say. The president needs to take control of this agenda and move forward with infrastructure because that is what he promised, and that's where the jobs are, and then we can rebuild our roads and our bridges and our tunnels and our infrastructure.
So here's the little challenge with that. There's a provision now that exists in Congress called PAYGO, and that's pay-as-you-go, meaning that this very huge tax bill that you're celebrating, championing, and cheerleading tonight has to be paid for. And one of the things that absolutely is in play is Medicare funding. That also means that Medicaid funding is also at risk. That also means that Social Security is also at risk. Entitlements are on the chopping block because this $1.5 trillion tax package has to be paid for. You can shake your head, but that's the law.
It's going to be paid for by economic growth, Angela. I mean, you people
I'm sorry,
don't understand.
Maybe you don't understand what pay-as-you-go means.
It's going to be paid for by economic
Paul
growth.
Ryan today said he's not sure that'll happen, John.
And driving up the economy.
I don't think you understand what I mean. PAYGO it means that whatever's on the books, something has to get hit. There's some cut that has to incur as a result of you spending more government money. That is a Republican-led agenda item that is on the books. We're not talking about an infrastructure package right now. I'm talking about how they're going to pay for this tax reform bill.
Yeah, okay.
Pay for the tax
Hold that
reform
thought, John.
by
On the other side of the
increasing
break, we'll be right back.
revenues through economic prosperity and growth.
All right, I'm back now with my panel, with my experts, I should say, Angela Rye and John Frederick. So President Trump and the GOP notching a big legislative win with their tax bill, which also makes a big change to Obamacare. Let's talk about that. Angela, I just want to play something from the president today after this tax bill passed. Here's what he told reporters.
I hate to say this, but we essentially repealed Obamacare because we got rid of the individual mandate, which was terrible. And that was a primary source of funding of Obamacare.
So, Angela, the president seems to think that stripping away the law's individual mandate amounts to repeal of the whole law.
Yeah, that's not true, but here's the big challenge. It is a linchpin of Obamacare, of the Affordable Care Act, and that is by forcing an individual mandate, it ensures that healthier people are helping to ensure that premiums are lower for the American people. What he really did was he sacrificed health care for at least 13 million Americans by agreeing to sign this bill into law. He hasn't signed it into law yet, but that is the main challenge with this tax reform measure. You are creating a situation where it's more difficult for people to have not just health care, but affordable health care, something that he was saying that he was for.
Yeah. John, millions of Americans will lose their insurance as a result of this. Is this really something to celebrate, you think?
Totally false, Don. We have millions of Americans right now that are paying $1,000 or upwards tax on them because if they don't buy the insurance, they have to pay the tax. So here's what happens. Okay, so a family has to pay.
They're going to lose their health care.
Well, but Don, how about the people who are paying $1,000 a month premiums and have $7,000 a month deductible? Don, they have to spend $19,000 before they get a dime back. So basically, this was a redistribution of income. That's all it was. It was a tax to make people buy something they don't need, don't want, can't do anything with, and just giving money to the government with a shotgun to their head. And now they're going to opt out of the program and put it in a health savings account or buy something else. This program made no sense. This was a tax on people that were made to buy an insurance that didn't do anything for their families, and that's why they're getting out of it.
Let Angela respond. Go ahead.
So first, that's not true. What's happened over time, and hopefully you'll at least be willing to admit this, Republicans have made it abundantly challenging to keep Obamacare in place. You have Republican governors who have opted out of exchanges, making insurance premiums also rise. That was an intentional sabotage of Obamacare. So I also am very curious, in what state is a premium $1,000 a month? Like where does that exist? And the $750 deductible you're talking about, where is that?
Well, no, the deductible, when I left...
The $1,000 premium that you talked about,
when I left Obamacare, I have a family of three. My family's payment went from $500 a month to $1,000, and my deductible went to $10,000. That means that I had to pay $22,000 before I'd get a dime back. The alternative to that was paying the fine and putting the balance of the money in savings.
You have a family of three, though. That's taking care of three people. It's
three people. I mean, I'm an average American. They got hammered by this thing. And my wife had to go out and find an alternative to this in the share market in order to keep my child in Catholic school. I mean, this is the reality.
So are you arguing in favor of single payer or for universal health care?
I'm arguing in favor of not making people pay something that doesn't make any sense for them and hurts their family so they have no insurance. Basically,
so now your insurance is gonna triple. So initially you're paying $300 per person, which I can be honest with you in saying my insurance monthly payment is around $300, $350. So we're about the same, and technically you're a little bit less. Now you're looking at tripling that payment with less coverage because of whatever the Republicans are.
You have no idea what the premiums are going to be. Look, there's no
what we know for sure is they're going to be higher.
Well, they keep going up. There's Obamacare has not done anything to bring the costs down. I mean, the whole purpose of Obamacare, Obama said you're going to save.
True.
Wait a minute, Angela. Obama came on TV and said you're going to save $2,500. Lie, false. Nobody saved that. Obama came on TV and said you're going to be able to keep your doctor. Lie,
I
false.
Kept my doctor.
Obama came on TV and said
I kept my doctor.
You can choose your hospital.
I kept my doctor, and my insurance premiums went down. It's not a lie. Like, just because you personally did not witness this, you also started this conversation by talking about a person with $1,000 payment every month, and then you admitted later it's for three people. That's $300 a month per person.
Well, a family of three in America is within the mean, right? You want to talk about a single person?
Well, now the challenge that you're going to experience is that you're going to be paying more than that.
Go ahead, Angela. Finish. Go ahead, Angela.
No, you're going to be paying more for less. That's the reality of this. When you have healthy people that are no longer forced to have to pay for insurance, you're going to have sick people only who opt into those plans. And sick people, now pre-existing conditions is on the chopping block. Whether or not they can get the doctor they need or the prescriptions they need, all of that is at risk because of greed.
Well, John,
that's what this tax bill is about.
John, let me just say this to you.
Greed?
And let me just say this,
What are
John.
you talking about? The average
John, listen to me. Well, let me just say this. As a single person who pays a lot for health insurance, and when you say you pay for 3 people, you pay $1,000, I understand. But as a single person, I probably pay that much or close to that amount for health insurance in this country. If we want to insure a lot of people, we have to make sacrifices. So why are you complaining? We would all like it to come down. I would like to pay less, and I see you, quite honestly, I see you as paying a lot less than me, and I'm happy that you're doing it.
Well, Don, when your premium is $1,000 and your deductible is $10,000, you have to spend $22,000 before you get a dime back from your insurance company. I don't have $22,000 lying around. You know, perhaps
most people don't.
You and Angela don't. I don't, right? I'm in media.
Most people don't have that money lying around.
That I could just pay for something.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well,
there are a lot of people who pay a lot of money for health. There are a lot of healthy people like us who pay a lot of money for people who aren't necessarily healthy. And we understand if we want to be real Americans and help out our brothers and sisters, just like we're going to pay more taxes under this new tax plan, then that's what we have to do as Americans. Maybe we don't buy another pair of shoes. Maybe we don't shop at Whole Foods. Maybe you buy 1 or 2 or 3 less Christmas presents at Christmas. Maybe you don't get a new car every year. Maybe you understand that you have to help to take care of the least of these instead of thinking so selfishly about your own needs.
It's not selfish, Don, but at least you're being honest and saying, look, I want you to pay into a system that doesn't benefit you or your family and might put you at risk in order to help everybody else. If Obama said that...
If I have to pay more money, I am happy paying more money as a single person, as a healthy person for you.
Are either of you going to
get worse for him?
Are either of you going to dispute to me that President Obama said that every family was saved $2,500? Did I make that up, or did he say that?
Under Obamacare. No, I saved money.
Did the average American save $2,500?
We'll leave the mics open and the satellite. Hopefully it'll be open. You guys can
Let's
discuss
stop lying
after the thing. Back. Guess who's here? I'm so excited. Neil deGrasse Tyson is in the house. The famed astrophysicist is here to tell me why he is happy someone is looking into what this flying object is. He has a lot to say about it. Don't go anywhere. I want you to listen to this recording of a Navy pilot checking out an unidentified object.
Dude, this is going on, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's a... Look at that thing. It's rotating.
So we now know that the government is studying anomalous aerospace threats. In other words, UFOs. Does this mean that there really is something out there? I want to talk about this now with one of my favorite, well, not one of my favorite, he is my favorite astrophysicist, Neil deGrasse Tyson, author of Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. And I said,
how many astrophysicists do you know?
Oh, you're the only one.
Thank you.
That's what I said. Well, one of. But did you notice, I tried to get your attention because did you see everyone in the studio when when that was playing?
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
They're wrapped.
What is that?
It's unidentified. That's what the U stands for in UFO. I'm just saying. That's why it's called. If you knew what it was, it would be an IFO. See, that's how that works.
Come on now, I have a cold. I mean, it is fascinating.
Anything you don't know flying in the sky
is unidentified.
If it's unidentified, it's a fascinating thing. And if you sort of put them all in a box and ask, okay, how many of these could be known to someone who has extensive knowledge of what could happen in the sky, as do people in my community, for example. That would take away sort of most of this. They'd be IFOs to me and UFOs to many others. And then there's always some where nobody knows what it is.
So
and this one looked like nobody knows
what it is. We had scientists come on and say they'd never seen anything like that. I wondered, I had someone on last night, I wondered, could it be...
Well, I'm not your first scientist.
No, no, it was an investigative journalist. But And I'm just wondering if could it be from another country? Could they be doing some sort of reconnaissance or?
You
don't know.
I don't know, and I'm glad the Pentagon looked into it. I think that's what made it a story. There's always some fuzzy video of an object in the sky that people can't identify. The YouTube is full of those. What got the media attention here, by my read, is that the Pentagon spent $22 million investigating just this kind of thing.
Right.
And then you pause for a minute and say, I'm glad they're investigating unknown things that could pose an airborne security threat.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely check it out.
So when you see this, you're not surprised by it. You know that this is going on, that these programs are going on, and you're not.
No. It's not so much that I'm not surprised. It's just I'm glad to learn that the Pentagon looked into it, and they did look into it, and the project is over, and they're on to other things. By the way, $22 million, that feels like a lot of money relative to the federal budget. Is 0.0001%.
I'm glad you said that. The Defense Department annual budget is $600 billion.
Right.
They stopped this. They received only $22 million, but they stopped this in 2012.
Yeah.
This funding.
It was about 5 years. Over a 5-year thing.
Was that a mistake?
If they study what that is or what it could be and recognize it's not a threat and what they care about are threats, I'm cool with that. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to play this. This is the head of the program. His name is Luis Elizondo, a military intelligence officer. This is what I was talking about. He sat down with Aaron Burnett earlier this week, and here's what he had to say.
I can't speak on behalf of the government. Obviously, I'm not in the U.S. government anymore. My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
Okay, so the threshold for when one invokes the word compelling,
right,
in reference to evidence is very different for different people. To a scientist, compelling evidence would be an alien walks into the bar with you. An alien, you have the craft. The alien is there on something other than fuzzy video.
Yeah.
And everybody has a high definition video camera on their hip right now. And so what I'd like to see is an increase in sort of high definition imagery of actual aliens or the interior of an alien craft. Look at all the stories we've heard about people having been abducted. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just waiting for that and go get abducted. Invite yourself to get abducted and then come back and then you'll be famous, you'll be rich, and more power to you.
You do that. Okay?
I'm just saying.
I'm not sure I find
just because there's something you can't explain, doing things that you don't understand is not equal to that thing being intelligent aliens visiting from outer space.
What do you think? Because I'm sure you look at every administration's...
by the way, one other thing. A quick thing about that video. It was infrared.
Right.
And you can flip the contrast to go negative or positive on those kinds of images. So it's infrared. So just to be careful what you're saying, they didn't see an object. Their detector detected something.
Okay.
Whatever that thing is. That's actually different from them seeing something out their own window.
Yeah.
All right. Their sensors detected something.
Yeah.
So could there be something wrong with the sensors? Could there? These are all the things you would have to investigate if you wanted to fully recognize what's going on there.
What do you think of this administration's funding of NASA, the space program, or what have you?
So I don't. The space program is our future, our survival of our civilization.
Yeah.
Will pivot on how wisely we think about the exploration of space. There are the ingredients called rare earth elements on Earth.
Quickly, because I want to get your book
in space, they're not rare.
Yeah. well, let's talk about your book now, because we have a short time left, and I think the book is really important. I want to ask you about it. It's called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry.
Oh, yeah, it came out this past summer.
Yeah, why did you write that book? I actually saw you on The View talking about it.
On The View? You chilling with
That's
The View.
my morning show. I'm late. It's almost midnight. Why'd you write it?
No, I just noticed that anytime I talked about the universe, if I sort of hand-curated certain mind-blowing things about the universe and shared it with people, they would never sort of let me go. They wanted to just keep listening and follow me down the street. I said, let me write a book so that I can just hand them the book and I can keep walking. So the book is a hand-picked set of some of the most extraordinary things we have come to discover about this universe in which we all live.
And it's a bestseller.
And it was like It's still on the bestseller list.
book is
There's
called
an appetite out there for the universe.
Astrophysics for
I'm
People
delighted
in a Hurry.
and honored that people have made me part of that.
By the only astrophysicist I know. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Thank you. I appreciate it. Because I'm going to do that because I have a
We can
cold. I don't
fist
wanna
bumps
give you a
work.
cold.
All
Thank
right.
you. That's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. I'll see you right back here tomorrow.